All right, so get ready because today we're taking a deep dive into some pretty unique territory.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be looking at this self-published book called A New Testament Psalm.
Okay.
And it's a pretty wild mix, let me tell you.
Interesting.
It takes the book of Revelation,
Uh-huh.
with all the crazy symbolism and intense prophecies and stuff,
Right.
and reimagines it all as poetry.
Wow.
And on top of that, the author even throws in some commentary about modern society.
Oh, wow.
It's definitely a bold move, to say the least.
It is. It is. What's really interesting is that the author actually claims that poetry is the key to understanding Revelation.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, it unlocks a whole new level of meaning.
Exactly. So our mission today is to see if that's true.
Okay.
Can we actually get something new out of this book that has confused and fascinated people for centuries?
The book has been debated for centuries. Yeah, well, the book itself is structured pretty simply.
Okay.
There's a prologue that sets the scene, and then it's a series of individual psalms. Each one corresponds to a chapter in Revelation.
Gotcha. And some of those psalms are really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Like Psalm 845, it's the one where God is watching humanity just totally lose it.
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty disturbing picture when you think about it.
Yeah.
And the poetic language makes it even more intense.
I can see that. It sounds like the author is drawing a parallel
Uh-huh.
between what the early Christians were dealing with,
Yeah.
the ones Revelation was originally written for,
Right.
and the anxiety we feel in the modern world.
I see that.
Both times have this feeling of things being out of control,
Yeah, totally.
Violence, uncertainty, like everything's just falling apart.
Right. So the author is connecting ancient prophecy to modern issues right from the start.
Exactly. And that connection continues as we move into the section on the 7 churches.
Oh, right. The 7 churches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These were real communities of early Christians
Mm,
living under Roman rule, facing persecution,
right.
really struggling to keep their faith.
Yeah. And each church gets a specific message.
Right. And the poems reimagine those messages as warnings and words of encouragement.
Okay, let's get into some of those messages.
Yeah.
Like the one to Ephesus.
Okay.
It's a warning about losing their first love.
Right.
What do you think that means both back then and for us now?
Well, Ephesus was a wealthy city, which
Yeah.
often came with, materialism and a focus on worldly pleasures.
Uh-huh.
So maybe the message about losing their first love was a warning about becoming complacent,
I can see that.
losing sight of their faith,
Yeah.
yeah, getting caught up in wealth and comfort.
And that definitely resonates with us today.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we're obsessed with stuff and status.
It's like a timeless warning
Totally.
about what happens when we forget what really matters.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder,
Hmm.
what are we sacrificing to chase success? What have we given up along the way?
What compromises have we made?
Big questions.
Big questions.
Okay, then there's Smyrna.
Yeah.
They get this message about enduring persecution. Not exactly cheerful.
No.
But there's also this sense of, strength.
Resilience.
Yeah, resilience in the face of hard times.
Absolutely. Smyrna was very loyal to Rome,
Okay.
which put Christians in a tough spot,
Yeah.
forced to choose between their faith
Uh-huh.
and loyalty to the empire.
Wow. So this message about facing persecution head on.
Yeah.
It's about courage and conviction.
Right.
Staying true to your beliefs no matter the cost.
Exactly. And that idea of standing up for your convictions,
Yeah.
even when it's unpopular or dangerous,
Right.
it feels so relevant today.
It really does. There's so much pressure to conform,
Mm-hmm.
to accept certain ideologies.
To stay silent when you see injustice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the message to Smyrna,
Mm-hmm.
it encourages us to stay true to ourselves.
Yes. Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
Yes.
Okay. Then we have Pergamos.
Right.
They're condemned for mixing their faith with pagan practices.
Right. Pergamos was a center for emperor worship.
Oh, wow.
So there was huge pressure to conform.
I can imagine.
This message is about keeping your identity.
Yeah.
Resisting the temptation to blend in.
Right.
Especially when it seems easier to just go with the flow.
So even though these messages were for specific churches so long ago,
Yeah.
they still offer insights into being human.
They do.
Struggles with faith compromise, having the courage to stand up for what you believe.
Absolutely.
That's what makes Revelation and these poems so captivating.
Right.
They tap into these universal themes.
But resonate across time and cultures.
Speaking of themes that resonate across time,
Yeah.
we can't talk about Revelation without talking about all the symbolism.
Oh, the symbolism.
And this author really goes all in on the imagery.
Oh, yeah.
You've got 4 horsemen,
Okay.
woman on a scarlet beast, and a lot more.
It's true. Apocalyptic literature is always very symbolic,
It is.
meant to evoke awe,
Mm,
wonder, even fear.
right,
It's not always meant to be taken literally.
right.
It's more about conveying profound truths
Right.
about humanity and the battle between good and evil.
Okay, let's break down some of the symbolism.
Okay.
Let's start with the 4 horsemen.
Okay.
War, famine, pestilence, and death.
Yeah.
Pretty scary, right?
It is. And I think what makes them so scary is
Okay.
that they tap into those deep-seated fears.
Yeah.
Fears that humans have had for centuries. Fear of scarcity,
Yeah.
disease, violence, and of course, our own mortality.
In these poems, the horsemen aren't just symbols.
Yeah.
They feel like actual threats,
Right.
warnings about what could happen because of our choices.
Nice to see that.
Like the author is saying, hey, look at where we're headed.
Yeah.
If we keep going down this road of greed and conflict and ignoring the planet,
Yeah.
these horsemen are going to become our reality.
It's a powerful interpretation.
It is.
Yeah.
It challenges us to think about how our actions,
Right.
both individually and as a society,
Yes.
contribute to the very things we're afraid of.
Absolutely.
Then there's the woman on the scarlet beast,
Oh, yes.
often interpreted as a corrupt system or empire.
Right.
The author calls her Babylon,
Hmm.
which carries a lot of historical and theological weight.
It does. The idea of Babylon
Yeah.
goes way back to ancient Mesopotamia.
Okay.
It's long been associated with things like decadence,
Ah,
oppression going against divine will.
wow.
It often represents a force that's opposed to truth, justice, and righteousness.
And this author seems to be drawing a direct line
Uh-huh.
between ancient Babylon and modern society.
Right. Like we've created our own version of Babylon.
Exactly.
A system built on wealth, power, and exploitation,
Yeah.
where technology is used to control people
Uh-huh.
and where our arrogance blinds us to our own flaws.
It's a pretty harsh critique.
It is.
Yeah.
But it also forces us to look at our own role in this system.
Right.
How do we contribute to these structures?
Yeah, good question.
How do our choices lead to the problems we complain about?
Man, that's a lot to think about.
It is.
And we're just getting started.
Yeah, we are.
But before we dive deeper into the author's views on modern society,
Okay.
let's take a closer look at some of the other powerful images and passages in these poems.
All right, let's do it. You know, as we were talking about those symbolic figures, like the 4 horsemen and the woman on the scarlet beast,
Right.
I was struck by how the author makes them feel fresh.
Yeah.
It's not just repeating the usual interpretations.
Uh-huh.
He brings a new perspective.
I agree. It's like he's taken these ancient symbols
Yeah.
and made them feel urgent and relevant to us now.
Exactly.
Like in Psalm 851,
Okay.
with the 2 witnesses,
Witnesses?
these mysterious figures,
Yeah.
often seen as prophets who challenge evil.
Mm,
They're described so vividly,
Ugh.
well, they jump right off the page.
that's true. And it's fascinating how the author connects them
Yeah.
to the idea of speaking truth to power.
Oh, yeah.
Even when you face persecution,
Right.
they become symbols of courage,
Uh-huh.
resilience, that unwavering commitment to your beliefs.
It's like he's saying that in every generation,
Yeah.
there are people who stand up to corruption, who fight injustice,
Right.
people who refuse to be silenced.
Even when they're met with resistance.
And that message feels so important right now.
It does. We see so many people fighting for social justice, environmental protection, human rights.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that we all have a part to play
Mm.
in speaking truth to power.
No matter how small our voice might seem,
Right.
then there are the Psalms that describe the plagues.
Oh, yes.
The ones unleashed by angels,
Uh-huh.
like Psalms 852 and 853.
Right.
Those are some of the most intense and unsettling passages in the whole book.
I agree. And I think what makes them so unsettling is
Yeah.
that they tap into our deepest fears
Uh-huh.
about how fragile life is
Mm.
and the consequences of our actions.
Right.
Throughout history, plagues have been seen as both natural disasters
Yeah.
and divine judgments,
Right.
reminders of how vulnerable we are and the limits of human control.
And in these poems, the plagues aren't just physical.
No,
They represent a kind of spiritual reckoning,
I see that.
a purging of corruption, a return to balance.
It's interesting because the author seems to be suggesting
What's that?
that sometimes drastic measures are needed to cleanse and heal.
That's a pretty provocative idea,
It is one that definitely sparks debate.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then we have Psalm 855,
Okay.
which describes the fall of Babylon.
Right.
It's so powerful and intense. It's like watching an empire crumble in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this sense of justice being served.
The fall of Babylon,
Yeah,
in both the Bible and literature, often represents the triumph of good over evil,
right.
the downfall of corrupt systems, the establishment of a new order.
It's a powerful archetype.
It is one that resonates across cultures and time periods.
And in this poem, the author links the fall of Babylon to the idea of societal transformation. It's like he's saying that if we want a more just and equitable world, we need to be willing to dismantle the structures that cause injustice and inequality.
It's a radical idea.
It is. But it also speaks to our desire for a better world.
Yeah.
A world where greed and oppression and violence aren't in control.
A world where those things don't dominate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit
All right.
and talk about Psalm 856.
Okay.
Which focuses on the events leading up to the final judgment.
Right.
This poem has a real sense of urgency, like the world is holding its breath.
Anticipation.
Yeah, anticipation, waiting for what's coming next.
Yes, there's definitely a buildup of tension. The imagery is vivid and evocative.
Right.
It pulls you into the story.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of immediacy.
It's like we're standing on the edge of something huge, something that's going to change everything.
Something monumental.
Exactly. And then in Psalm 857,
Okay.
we have this beautiful and hopeful vision of the redeemed from every nation gathering before God.
Yes.
They're described as a multitude clothed in white robes, worshiping together in unity and harmony.
That image of the multitude in white robes,
Yeah.
it's a recurring symbol in Revelation. It represents the fulfillment of God's promise of salvation. It's a powerful reminder that redemption is available to everyone,
Right.
no matter who you are or where you come from.
It's a truly inspiring message.
It is, especially in a world that feels so divided.
Yeah, it speaks to our shared humanity
Right.
and the potential for unity and understanding.
Even with all our differences.
Exactly. It reminds us that we're all part of something bigger, connected by a common destiny.
Right.
Then things get really dramatic in Psalm 858.
Oh, yeah.
It depicts the word of God riding a white horse, leading an army of angels into battle.
Wow.
It's like a scene from an epic movie.
It is. It draws on those traditional images of Christ as a conquering king.
Right.
A righteous judge who returns to defeat evil.
And establish his kingdom on earth.
It's both awe-inspiring and a little bit scary.
It is. It reminds us that there are forces at work
Yeah.
that we can't even comprehend.
Yeah.
Forces that ultimately align with justice and righteousness.
And it speaks to our deep desire for justice, for good, to triumph over evil.
Yes.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's still hope.
Hope remains.
And then after the final battle in Psalm 859,
Okay.
we have this incredible scene of celebration in heaven. The multitude sings praises to God, and there's talk of a marriage supper of the Lamb.
Right.
It's a joyous ending to a long and difficult journey.
That image of the marriage supper of the Lamb,
Yeah.
it's a powerful metaphor for the union between Christ and his followers.
Right.
The ultimate fulfillment of God's plan for humanity.
It represents a state of perfect communion,
Yes.
where love, joy, and peace are supreme,
It's like a glimpse into a reality we can barely understand.
where everything is made whole and the brokenness of this world is finally healed. It's a beautiful and profound vision,
It is.
one that offers comfort and hope
Yeah.
in the face of our own struggles and uncertainties.
Okay, now let's talk about Song 860,
Right.
which deals with the concept of the millennium,
The millennia.
the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth.
Right.
This is a topic that's caused a lot of debate.
It has throughout Christian history.
Yeah.
And this poem offers a unique perspective.
Okay.
It depicts the millennium as a time of peace and righteousness, where Christ rules with a royal priesthood. But even in this seemingly perfect time,
Yeah.
evil hasn't been completely eliminated.
Right. The poem describes how Satan is released after the 1,000 years
Yes,
and leads one last rebellion against God.
that final rebellion.
It's a reminder that even in a world where good prevails, the potential for evil and temptation
Yeah.
is still there.
It's like saying that even in paradise, we have free will
Right.
and the ability to choose darkness over light.
It's a sobering thought,
It is.
but it also highlights the importance of staying vigilant,
Yes.
being discerning, and continuing to fight against evil in all its forms. So even in this perfect future, we still need faith, resilience, and the courage to stand up for what's right.
It's a message that runs through the whole book.
It does.
The battle between good and evil never ends.
Right.
And we have to be a part of it.
We can't just sit back and watch.
Exactly. We have to be active participants.
As we've been talking about all these themes and images, I keep coming back to the author's critique of modern society. It's woven throughout these poems.
It is.
It's not subtle at all.
Not at all. There's a sense of urgency, even anger. Especially when he talks about materialism, our dependence on technology, the erosion of spiritual values.
Like in Psalm 861, there's this line that really struck me.
What's that?
Everything, including the monetary system, must be destroyed to erase reminders of past wicked behavior.
Wow.
That's a pretty radical statement.
It is. It suggests a complete overhaul of our systems and values, a rejection of the structures that have led to injustice, inequality, spiritual emptiness.
It's like he's calling for a total reset, a return to a more fundamental way of being.
That's a fascinating interpretation.
It is. Well, and it makes you wonder, is our current path sustainable? Are we heading towards a better future? Or are we on a path to destruction?
Are we headed for a precipice?
Big questions.
They are.
And then in Psalm 862, there's this emphasis on humility and the meek inheriting the earth. It's like a complete reversal of the values we usually see celebrated.
Like ambition, power, and wealth.
Exactly.
It's a challenging message.
It is.
But also a hopeful one. It suggests that true strength isn't about dominance or control.
It's about humility, compassion, and serving others.
It's like he's saying that if we want a just and sustainable world, we need to shift our focus from self-interest to the well-being of everyone.
To the collective.
Exactly. And that requires a fundamental change in our values.
It does.
A willingness to let go of ego.
Right.
And embrace a more interconnected way of being.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. From the Four Horsemen to the challenges of the seven churches, the fall of Babylon, the millennium, and even a pretty harsh critique of modern society. This book really makes you think.
It does. And I think what makes a New Testament psalm so compelling is that it doesn't shy away from the big questions.
Doesn't.
It challenges us to really examine our own beliefs, our values, and our role in shaping the world around us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into a New Testament psalm, I'm really struck by how much we've covered.
From those vivid symbols like the Four Horsemen and the woman on the scarlet beast to the author's really sharp critique of modern society.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It really has. And it all leads back to that central question that we started with. Does framing Revelation as poetry actually make its messages easier to understand?
I think it definitely offers a new way to engage with this ancient text, a text that can be really challenging sometimes.
It can.
Poetry with its evocative language and its ability to convey complex ideas through metaphors and imagery. It can kind of bypass those intellectual barriers that might stop us from really getting the deeper meaning.
It's like it speaks directly to our hearts and imaginations instead of getting lost in theological debates and historical interpretations.
And in that sense, I think the author succeeds in making Revelation feel more immediate, more relevant to our lives.
And one thing that really stood out to me is the author's emphasis on personal transformation. It's not just about understanding Revelation intellectually. It's about letting those messages really challenge us, convict us, and inspire us to live differently.
I agree. There's a definite call to action in these poems.
There is.
It's like the author saying, hey, don't just read these words. Let them change you. Let them shake you out of your comfort zone and inspire you to be a force for good in the world.
And that call to action is woven throughout the book.
It is.
From the messages to the seven churches, to the warnings about materialism, our dependence on technology, and the pursuit of power at the expense of compassion and justice.
Absolutely. And those warnings feel especially relevant today.
They do. We're facing so many challenges.
We are.
Climate change, political and social divisions, economic inequality, a sense of spiritual emptiness.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all.
It is. even hopeless.
Yeah.
But this book offers a glimmer of hope, don't you think?
I think so.
It reminds us that even in the midst of darkness, there's always a chance for transformation.
Right.
Both individually and as a society.
I think the author is pointing us toward a different path, a different way of being in the world.
Okay.
One that's grounded in humility, compassion, and a deep respect for all of creation.
And that path, while challenging,
it is,
ultimately leads to a more fulfilling life.
I think so.
It's about aligning ourselves with good, becoming agents of healing and transformation in a world that desperately needs it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious to know what resonated most with you. What message or image will you take with you?
Well, for me, it's the idea that even when faced with overwhelming challenges, we still have the power to choose hope over despair, love over fear, action over apathy.
It's a powerful message.
It is. It reminds me that each of us, no matter how small our impact might seem, we can make a difference.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
And I think it speaks to the power of revelation itself.
Yeah.
This book has fascinated and challenged people for centuries, offering warnings and promises, visions of destruction and renewal.
It really has it all.
And ultimately, it's a book about hope.
It is.
The hope that even in the midst of chaos and darkness, a new dawn is possible.
And that's a message worth holding on to.
Absolutely. A message that can guide us, inspire us, and empower us to create a world that reflects our best selves.
A world where love, justice, and compassion prevail.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a New Testament psalm.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it sparked some of your own reflections.
Yeah.
And maybe even inspired you to see the world and your place in it with new eyes.